At Christmas dinner, I knocked on the door with a bottle of wine in one hand and homemade dessert in the other. The porch smelled like cinnamon and cedar. Laughter spilled through the walls like warmth. And then the door swung open. It was my sister. Hair curled. Dress perfect. Eyes already sharp. She looked me up and down, then leaned against the doorframe. "We don't want you here," she said. "Go ruin someone else's holiday." Behind her, I saw the dining table. Candles flickering. Ham glistening. My mother pouring wine. My brother throwing his head back in laughter. No one looked at the door. No one noticed I hadn't come in. I stood there for a second, just long enough for my heart to break, without shattering. Then I nodded, stepped back onto the icy steps, and said, "Got it." I turned and walked away, the cold biting into my skin harder than her words did. My name is Samantha, and from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because have you ever realized, all in one moment, that your family never saw you as one of them? That your seat at the table was always conditional? That love, in their house, came with a side of silence? I got in my car, sat in the driveway for a moment, hands on the wheel, and then I drove away. 10 minutes later, I was halfway down Main Street when I heard it, my phone buzzing like it was on fire. Dad. Again. Dad. I picked up, and all I heard was him, yelling my name into the wind, like someone had just woken him from a lie. "Samantha, where are you? You need to come back, now." I pulled over, rolled down the window, let the cold slap my face and whispered, "Why?" You all looked happy without me. What he said next changed everything. And by the time I turned the car around, I wasn't coming back as the forgotten daughter. I was coming back as the truth. The panic in his voice wasn't subtle. Not irritation. Not guilt. Panic. "Your sister told us you weren't coming," my dad said breathlessly. "She said you were spending Christmas with friends. That you'd decline the invite." "I texted Mom 3 days ago," I said, my voice flat. "I never saw it," he replied. "We thought you were just avoiding us again." Avoiding? I pulled up to the side of the road and stared at the phone like it had personally betrayed me. "She told you I wasn't coming, then slammed the door in my face when I did?" I asked. "She what?" he said, his voice rising. "She did what?" And that's when I realized. This wasn't just cruelty. It was strategy. My sister had rewritten the narrative before I even arrived. She planned the exile in advance, got them all warm, cozy, full, and ignorant before delivering the lie that I had ghosted them. Because what's more believable than the family screw-up not showing up? "Samantha," my dad said, "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know." I exhaled, slow and steady. "I know, Dad. But she did." I turned the car around. And this time, I wasn't driving back with cranberry pie and good intentions. I was driving back with receipts. Because while they ate and laughed and toasted without me, they didn't know I'd kept everything. The texts, the screenshots, the voicemails, even the audio from outside the door when she slammed it in my face and muttered, "That should do it." She'd played the long game. But I'd been quietly building the archive. When I walked back in, my dad met me at the door. Arms wide, eyes wide, face red. "I'm so sorry, baby," he whispered, hugging me like he'd just found something he never meant to lose. But over his shoulder, I saw her, my sister, standing frozen at the end of the hall. Champagne flute still in hand, smile cracking, color draining, because I wasn't supposed to come back. And I sure as hell wasn't supposed to come back with the truth. The room went still. Forks paused midair. My mother's eyes darted from me to my sister, like she was watching two versions of a memory collide. "Samantha," she said carefully, "we didn't think you were coming." "She told you that," I said calmly, peeling off my coat. "I never said it." My sister finally stepped forward, but her voice was too light, too late. "I just didn't want everyone getting their hopes up. You've missed a lot lately." "I've missed a lot," I repeated. "Or you've explained away a lot?" Dad turned, eyes narrowing. "Did you read her text or not?" My sister blinked. I might have forgotten." "Forgotten?" I said. Like how you forgot to tell them I left a voicemail. Like how you forgot to open the gift I sent last year, but managed to post it on your Instagram anyway with your name on the tag.
Gasps.
My cousin put down her glass. My mother looked like she'd been slapped. I have the receipts, I said, pulling out my phone and tapping into the folder labeled Holiday Gaslight Chronicles. Yes, I had named it. I didn't want this. I really didn't. I continued. But I'm tired of being the villain in your stories. I hit play. And there it was. The voice memo. My sister, at the door just hours ago. We don't want you here. Go ruin someone else's holiday. Then, her voice again, muttering as she turned away. That should do it. The room collapsed into silence. My aunt covered her mouth. My brother stood slowly, like gravity had shifted. Even the kids stopped chewing. My sister took a step back. Okay, she said, her voice shaking. Maybe that wasn't fair. But you've always made things about you. I haven't made anything. I cut in. I've just stopped letting you erase me. Dad turned to her, his face thunder. Out, he said. She blinked. What? You heard me, he said. Get out, Dad.
Now.
She looked around the room, expecting someone, anyone, to defend her. No one moved. And for the first time in my life, my sister looked truly, completely alone. She left. No shoes. No jacket. No last word. And the second the door shut behind her, my mom said softly, "Why didn't we see it before?" I looked around the table. I think deep down you did.
But now?
They couldn't unsee it. Dinner resumed, but it wasn't the same. The laughter came slower now. The wine glasses clinked quieter. And for once, the tension in the room didn't come from me being there. It came from the fact that they'd finally seen what I'd carried for years. After dessert, my father pulled me aside into the hallway, away from the whispers, away from the questions. He looked shaken, embarrassed, like a man standing in the wreckage of a home he thought was built on love and just realized was built on loyalty to the wrong daughter. I failed you, he said. I swallowed hard. You believed her. I wanted to believe both of you, he admitted. But she always took up more space. You were quieter. No, I corrected him. I was tired. He nodded slowly, tears glossing his eyes. I should have asked why, he said. I didn't reply. What do you say when a lifetime of gaslighting is finally acknowledged? Instead, I let him sit in the truth. He hugged me tight.
Real.
Not performative. Stay tonight, he said. Please. Let's start fixing this. I nodded. But I knew this wasn't about starting. This was about stopping what never should have been allowed. That night, as I changed into borrowed pajamas and curled up in my childhood bedroom, I scrolled through the new group chat Dad had created. Family rebuild, no lies. One by one, relatives joined. No sister. No fake apologies. Just honest faces. Quiet messages. My brother wrote, "We owe you more than a text." My cousin added, "She always dimmed you. Never again." And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a guest in my own bloodline. Downstairs, I heard Dad cleaning up the plates she left behind. And I smiled. Because this wasn't revenge. This was restoration. And my absence wasn't the threat. It was the wake-up call. The next morning, I found my sister's gift still under the tree. Wrapped in silver foil, ribbon tied perfectly, presentation over sincerity, as always. I picked it up and saw the tag. To Dad from both of us. Both of us. She'd tried to erase me even in her giving. I set it on the counter and made coffee. By noon, she'd started posting. Not an apology. Not even a denial. Just vague, sulky captions with snowflake emojis and phrases like, "Sometimes your absence is your power," and "letting go of toxicity this season." She was trying to reclaim the narrative again, flipping herself into the victim before anyone else could accuse her of being the villain. It might have worked before, but not this time. Not when the whole family had already seen the footage, heard her words, watched the truth knock the wind out of her lies. Dad refused to engage online. Instead, he called every family member personally that day to tell them the truth. to say he was sorry, to say he finally saw it. And every single one of them said the same thing. We always had a feeling. We just didn't want to believe it. I spent that day quietly helping Mom put away the Christmas dishes. She didn't say much until she handed me a photo, one I hadn't seen in years. It was me at 12, holding a school award, face flushed with pride. Behind me, barely visible, was my sister, pretending to cry into her sleeve. Even then, "She's been doing this since you were a kid," Mom said softly. I nodded, and then I asked, "Why didn't you stop her?" She didn't answer for a long time. Then, because we mistook drama for pain, and silence for strength. I blinked. That one sentence cracked something in me. Because they hadn't just failed me, they'd admired my ability to endure. But endurance isn't love, and silence isn't peace. That night, I lit a candle and wrote a letter to my younger self. It started with, "You were never hard to love. They just didn't know how to hold you without guilt." And I ended it with, "Next year, you set the guest list. Because family isn't just who invites you in. It's who honors you when you show up." A few days after Christmas, the group thread exploded. Not with drama, but with silence. No one had heard from my sister. No guilt-lay selfies. No manipulative New Year, New Me posts. Just nothing. Until my brother sent a message. "She's at Aunt May's." Showed up crying. Said she's being erased from the family. The irony nearly knocked the wind out of me. Erased? That was my seat she'd stolen.
My voice she drowned.
My presence she edited out of holidays like a bad photograph. And now, when truth finally sat at the table, she screamed exile? But I didn't respond to the thread. I was done explaining who I was. Instead, I kept moving forward. I started planning a dinner at my place, a quiet New Year's gathering with people who had shown up for me when it counted. No one asked if she was invited. No one tiptoed around the question. The absence spoke for itself. On New Year's Eve, my house glowed with gold lights and calm laughter.
Dad brought wine.
Mom brought her favorite pie, the one she never made when my sister was around because she didn't like the smell. And I brought peace. Real peace. Not the kind that comes from keeping everyone comfortable. The kind that comes from choosing who gets access to you. Later that night, Dad stood up for a toast. "I've spent a long time defending what I didn't understand," he said, looking at me. "But this year, I'm starting over. And I want to thank the one person in this room who taught me how." He raised his glass toward me. "To Samantha. For setting the boundary we were too afraid to admit we needed." The room clinked glasses. I smiled, but inside I was shaking. Because that's what healing does. It doesn't roar. It trembles. Quietly. Boldly. It rewrites you one honest moment at a time. I never told my sister she couldn't come. But she didn't ask. And I didn't reach out. Because sometimes the deepest healing is not revenge or forgiveness. It's finally being okay with their silence. January came and went in quiet waves. No dramatic confrontations. No cryptic voicemails. Just absence. And for the first time in years, her silence wasn't a threat. It was relief. I found myself breathing easier, laughing louder, sleeping deeper. And then an email. No subject line. No signature. Just her name in the sender line. I almost deleted it. Almost. But curiosity has sharp teeth. I opened it. "I know you think you won. But you don't know what it's like to feel invisible. You've always been the favorite. You just didn't notice because you were too busy pretending to be the victim. Someday, when they turn on you, don't come running to me." No apology. No acknowledgement. Just one last grasp at rewriting history. I stared at it. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. I clicked reply. "I used to want your love. Then I wanted your apology.
Now?
I don't need either. I don't need to win. I just needed to stop losing myself every time you needed to feel big. You can stay gone. I'll stay whole." I hit send, then blocked her. Not out of anger. Out of finality. Because healing doesn't always look like reconciliation. Sometimes it looks like a clean inbox and a lighter chest. Later that week, I mailed out invites for a spring dinner I was hosting.
Small.
Meaningful. I wrote each name by hand. And this time, I didn't pause when I skipped hers. Because my table wasn't missing a chair. It had finally made room for me. I placed the last envelope in the mailbox and stood under the quiet sky. No grief. No guilt. Just this soft, solid truth. She left a hole, but I grew around it. Like roots. Like something finally grounded. Spring arrived like forgiveness, slowly, then all at once. The air was warmer. The silence stayed peaceful. And I was no longer bracing for impact every time the phone buzzed. The dinner came and went. 12 people at my table.
12 people who saw me.
Heard me. Held space without shrinking mine. After dessert, my dad stood again, this time more certain, more steady. He raised a glass. To the daughter who taught us that silence isn't strength, he said. To the woman who made a place for herself when none was offered.
There were no tears this time.
Only quiet, radiant pride. And as I looked around that table, faces glowing under string lights, laughter bouncing off the patio walls, I felt something I hadn't felt since childhood. Home. Not a place. Not a family name. But a feeling built from boundaries, self-respect, and finally, truth. My mother hugged me before she left. A real hug. One that didn't ask for anything back. And she whispered, "I'm proud of who you've become. I'm sorry we didn't make it easier for you to get here." I nodded, no longer needing more than that. I'd made it. By June, I heard my sister had moved. New city. New cycle. Still trying to spin stories without anyone left to cast in them.
But I didn't follow.
Didn't check her socials. Didn't care who she pretended to be next. Because I was busy living. Not proving. Not performing. Living. And on the first day of summer, I sat on my porch with coffee in one hand and sunlight on my skin, and I whispered the words I'd waited a lifetime to say. She can't hurt me anymore. And, even better, she can't rewrite me anymore. I wasn't the villain. I wasn't the forgotten. I wasn't the afterthought at the holiday table. I was the woman who stood at the door, heard hate, and chose truth anyway. I was the woman who turned a slammed door into an open life. I was the woman who came home to herself. Screamed out.
Shut down.
Shoved aside. That was my final family dinner. My name is Elena Hart. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because I need to ask you something. Has your own blood ever looked at you like a stray dog they couldn't wait to chase away? That's exactly what it felt like. We were sitting at the table, pretending like it was still a family, pretending like the tension wasn't thicker than the mashed potatoes no one touched. My sister, Brielle, slammed her glass down so hard, water spilled across the lace runner. You ruin everything. Every time you walk into a room, it's like the air turns sour. I hadn't said a word the entire evening. Just passed the dishes.
Smiled faintly.
Tried to be smaller. Quieter. But my silence was apparently the loudest offense. Mom didn't even blink. She just folded her napkin and said, "She's right. You're exhausting, Elena. You bring nothing but guilt and need. Always needing something. Just go." I blinked slowly, like maybe I misheard. But then Dad, who used to be my only anchor, reached for the remote and turned on the news. No one even looked at me, like I wasn't a daughter or a sister, just a burden whose exit would make dinner taste better. So I stood up, picked up my bag, and walked out the front door of the house I had secretly been helping keep afloat, paying off bills, forwarding half my paycheck, keeping the lights on when their pride couldn't admit they needed me. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even close the door loudly. I just disappeared. And in my silence, something inside me broke. But not in the way they expected. I spent that first night in a tiny Airbnb downtown. Mattress on the floor, ramen on the stove, peace in my chest. It felt like losing a limb but breathing for the first time. The next day, I woke up with one clear thought. They never cared what I gave. So maybe it was time to stop giving. 7 days later, to the hour, I got a text from Mom.
Hey.
Electric's due today. Can you send $180? No apology. No check-in. Just an invoice. I stared at my screen for a full 5 minutes. Then I typed, "I thought you wanted me gone." And when she replied, just 3 dots typing for a while, I followed it with, "So, I made sure the lights would follow me out." I had already removed my name from the utility account the night I left. I didn't even need to explain further, because a minute later, I got a final message from her. "Elena, what did you do?" I didn't reply, but I knew she'd figured out the moment the fridge clicked off and the TV went dark. There's a strange kind of power in being erased, because once you're no longer expected, you're free to stop sacrificing. They never asked where I was, never wondered if I was okay. But when the power went out and the heating died and the internet stopped working, suddenly I wasn't invisible anymore. 3 days after I stopped paying, I heard through a cousin that my sister Brielle had posted on Facebook. "Anyone know how to fight back utility companies who mess up your account? Our power got cut off out of nowhere. Not even a warning." I laughed, because there had been so many warnings. They just never saw them because they never saw me. You see, while Brielle and Mom were sipping wine and slandering me behind closed doors, I was the one filling the gaps. When the mortgage fell behind, I called in the payment. When the water bill was overdue, I wired the cash quietly. When the car broke down, I gave Mom my own. "No, thank you. No, we're proud." Just silence until I dared to stop giving. And suddenly they noticed the hole I left behind. Aunt Celia called me next. "Sweetheart, your mom's worried sick. The house is cold, Brielle's furious, and your mom's too embarrassed to ask for help."
But you know she didn't mean what she said.
Families fight. I closed my eyes and whispered into the phone. She didn't fight me. She banished me. She was upset.
So was I.
But I didn't ask them to leave my life. Aunt Celia went quiet, then said, "They're saying you're being dramatic, that you're making them suffer on purpose." I almost laughed, because for once they were half right. It wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about balance. If I wasn't welcome in their lives, then neither was my effort, my money, my time, my loyalty. On day 10, I got a voicemail from Brielle. Her voice was tight, angry. "You could have told us you were taking your name off stuff. This isn't funny, Elena. Grow up. Mom's health is acting up from the stress. If anything happens to her, that's on you." I stared at the phone. No apology. Just blame.
Still.
I almost replied. Almost. But then I remembered her yelling, "Get out of our lives," like it was a prayer. And I realized she never meant to say sorry.
She just wanted control back.
I started documenting everything. Screenshots of payments I'd made, receipts, text messages. I stored it all in a private Google Drive folder labeled "The Cost of Being Disposable." Not for them.
For me.
To remind myself that I wasn't crazy, that my kindness had receipts. And now, so would their regret. By week 2, the lawn grew wild. The mail piled up. They posted a passive-aggressive GoFundMe titled, "Help a mother and daughter save their home." I didn't donate, but I watched. And I waited, because I knew what was coming. And this time, I wouldn't be the one paying the price. When you stop holding up a collapsing house, people finally hear the creaking. But it's never gratitude that follows. It's panic. The messages kept coming in bursts. First silence, then guilt, then threats, then desperation. One night I got a text from Mom. "Elena, please. The water's off now. We're boiling snow.
Just send what you can.
Don't do this to us." Don't do this to us? I read that line over and over again. Like I hadn't spent 3 years cleaning up behind them, scraping my own dreams to dust so they could live in comfort. Like I hadn't walked in from my 12-hour shifts, only to find her feet up on the couch, sipping wine, watching soap operas while my paycheck kept the walls from falling. And now I was the one doing this to them. A week later, a neighbor posted on the local Facebook group, "Does anyone know what's going on with the Hart family? Their front porch light has been off for days, and I saw someone delivering notice papers." I didn't comment, but I watched the replies. Heard the daughter left. The younger one's always been entitled.
Sad.
The mom used to be so kind. I almost laughed at that last one.
Kind?
She once told me I had a failure face at 17, said I should just get married instead of chasing college. And when I did get into university on scholarship, she rolled her eyes and said, "Don't come crawling back when you realize books don't pay rent." But it was my rent money that had been keeping her lights on. I checked the bank account I used to wire money from. The automatic payments were all shut off. Every last one. I wasn't being cruel. I was being honest. They'd made it clear I wasn't family anymore. So I stopped acting like I was. Meanwhile, I was learning to breathe. Really breathe. I picked up hours at a co-working space. Started teaching coding workshops for women trying to leave toxic jobs. For the first time in years, people were thanking me, saying I mattered, telling me I was brilliant, not burdensome. One night, my old boss, a woman named Ms. Clark who had once mentored me during an internship, messaged me out of the blue. "I heard what happened at home. I just wanted to say, if you ever want to pitch that app idea you told me about, I have 3 investors interested in female founders. Let me know." I sat with that message for 10 whole minutes, then typed, "I'd love to." That night, for the first time in forever, I slept without grinding my teeth. Back at their house. I knew what was coming. Mom and Betrayal had spent years building their kingdom on my quiet shoulders. And now that I'd stepped out from underneath, their throne was rotting. They kicked me out like garbage. But I rose like fire, quiet, hot, and unstoppable. Not with vengeance. With vision. 3 weeks after I left, I walked into a small conference room inside a glass tower downtown. I was wearing the same blazer I'd bought from a thrift store 2 years ago. But now I wore it like armor. Ms. Clark introduced me to the 3 investors with a smile. "This is Elena Hart. She's developing a platform for remote caregivers and home managers, the ones who hold families together but never get seen."
They nodded politely.
Until I spoke. And then they listened. I pitched the app I'd once scribbled in a notebook between overnight shifts and grocery trips. An app that helps women track, manage, and bill the invisible labor they do, cooking, cleaning, budgeting, the unspoken jobs that held households like mine together until I walked away. I called it Unseen. 6 weeks later, I had funding. 8 weeks later, I had a team. 10 weeks later, our beta version was live. Meanwhile, back in my old neighborhood, their lights came back on, temporarily, thanks to a loan from some second cousin in Alabama. But by then, the gossip had already spread. Betrayal was never the smart one. I heard Elena's doing something big now. She's on LinkedIn every week getting awards. One day, I got tagged in a comment under a photo from a Women in Tech event. Is this the same Elena Hart who used to live on Willow Street?
I didn't reply.
But I knew who would see it. A week later, I got another message from Aunt Celia. "Your mom's asking about you again. Says she might have been harsh. Wants to talk."
Talk.
She didn't want to talk. She wanted to negotiate. But I wasn't for sale. Because while they were inside that house growing cold, I was out here becoming someone they never expected. I was speaking on panels, doing podcasts, writing op-eds with titles like, "When Family Doesn't Value You, Build Your Own Legacy." Each time, I imagined Mom reading those words in her dim kitchen, her pride choking on every sentence. One evening, I walked past a bookstore and saw a flyer. Women Who Led Anyway, panel event, March 3rd. My name was on it, in bold, with the words, Founder,
CEO,
Advocate. I stared at it for a long time, and then I walked in and bought every last copy of the magazine I was featured in, not for them.
For me.
For the girl they said would never be anything. Some houses collapse in storms. Others just rot from the inside, after the only one holding it up walks away. It started with an unpaid gas bill, then a notice for overdue taxes. Then the Homeowners Association filed a complaint, something about property disrepair, unkept lawn, and vermin sightings. I didn't know any of this firsthand. I just watched it unfold online. Their once glossy lives started peeling like cheap wallpaper. One post from Betrayal said, "Does anyone know how to fight an eviction when your name's not technically on the deed?" I stared at that sentence.
Technically. Right.
Because everything had been in Mom's name and mine. Not Brielle's. Not the golden girl, who deserved better than Bill's. The legal documents had always shown my name as co-signer, not for credit. For stability. Because I had the job, the record, the reliability. They just had the audacity. That's when it hit me. They were unraveling because I'd stopped covering for them. Not because I'd sabotaged them, but because I'd stopped saving them. Then the foreclosure letter came. It was shared, again, in a local group chat. Someone posted, "The Hart family house is listed for auction." So sad how quickly things can fall apart. So sad. I made tea and watched the comments roll in. Meanwhile, my own world was blooming. I'd just hired 2 new engineers. We were featured on a top startup watch list. I got an email from a national talk show asking if I'd appear for a Women's History Month special. I read the invite while sitting on a sunny cafe patio. The kind of place my family used to say was for show-offs with no responsibilities.
But now I was the show.
And the receipts? They were all in my name. That night, Mom called. Her number popped up like a ghost from another life. I stared at it ringing until it stopped. Then she texted, "Elena, the house is going. We don't know what to do. Please call me."
I didn't call.
I just replied, "You told me to leave your life." I did. So did my help. No exclamation. No insult. Just finality. Later that week, I got a letter in the mail. From the bank. It was a notice confirming the removal of my name from the mortgage. I'd filed for it quietly.
Cleanly.
Now it was official. The house they kicked me out of? No longer my burden. No longer my business. She tried to silence me with shame. But when the world heard my truth, her silence became permanent. It was a Friday night when the producer called. "We've been following your startup's journey. We'd love to have you on the show. Something special for Women's History Month. Are you open to it?" I was quiet for a moment. I thought about all the times I'd bitten my tongue. The birthdays missed because I was working. The promotions declined so I could send extra money home. The way Mom once said, "You were always more help than heart." And now the world wanted to hear my voice. I smiled. I'm in. The studio was bright and cold. I sat across from the host, a woman I'd admired for years, and she asked, "You've built something incredible from scratch. But the name of your company, Unseen, where did that come from?"
I didn't hesitate.
It came from years of doing everything and being treated like I was nothing. It came from holding families together while being told I wasn't really part of one. It came from being erased and choosing to reappear on my own terms. Silence. Then applause. Then a single spotlight. And for the first time in my life, I felt seen. The episode aired 3 days later. It went viral overnight. I got messages from strangers, women saying, "That was my story. You said what I never could. Thank you for reminding me I'm not alone." But one message stood out. From a neighborhood friend I hadn't spoken to in years. "Your mom watched it. Didn't say a word for hours. Just stared at the screen. Then she got up, turned the lights off, and went to bed without dinner." I didn't know how to feel.
Not joy.
Not pity. Just freedom. Because the girl they kicked out, the one they mocked for being too soft, too emotional, too much, she now had influence. And they had bills. They'd traded a daughter for control. And ended up losing both. A week later, I did a panel at a tech summit. At the end, I was handed a plaque that read, "Voice of the Year." I held it in my hand and remembered Mom's voice in my head. "No one wants to hear about your little struggles, Elena. Grow up." So I looked into the camera and said, without shaking, "To every woman who is told she talks too much,
talk louder.
To every daughter who is told she's ungrateful, know your worth. And to every person who is erased to keep the peace, come back louder than the silence they left you in." Thunderous applause. Flashbulbs. A standing ovation. And somewhere, in a dark house with unpaid electric bills, my mother watched that clip on a dim phone screen, charging off a neighbor's outlet. Some homecomings aren't about closure. They're about proof. that you made it, without the hands that dropped you. It was a cloudy Sunday morning when I returned to the neighborhood.
Not to see them.
But to see me, the version of me that used to walk home with groceries in both arms, while Brielle sat on the couch texting boys. And Mom muttered, "Why can't you just be more alike?" I parked at the edge of the block. The old house was smaller than I remembered, chipped paint, sagging roof, the curtains drawn like secrets. I didn't knock. I didn't need to. I walked to the mailbox and slipped in a letter. Nothing long, just the truth. You asked me to leave.
So I did.
And with me went the light, the loyalty, the lifeline. You told me I was a burden, but I paid the bills. You told me I wasn't family, but I was the foundation. So this isn't a reconciliation. It's a reminder.
I didn't abandon you.
I honored your request. Elena. Then I turned around and left. That was the last time I ever stepped foot on that street. A week later, Aunt Celia sent me a message. Your mom got the letter. She cried for hours. Didn't say a word. Just sat at the kitchen table staring at it. She said Mom keeps the envelope tucked into her Bible now, as if praying might turn back time. But you can't pray away reality, especially when you chose it. Especially when the daughter you tossed aside becomes the woman every mother now points to and says, "Be like her." Meanwhile, I was speaking at high schools, launching mentorship programs, and investing in shelters for displaced women. One of them approached me after a talk and asked, "What gave you the strength to leave?" I didn't hesitate. The moment I realized staying wasn't loyalty, it was slow death. She nodded like I'd given her a sword. And maybe I had. Back at home, the house went up for sale. Again. This time at a loss. Mom moved into a tiny apartment near the freeway. Brielle floated between friends' couches and bad decisions. And me? I was featured in Forbes. The headline read, "The girl they discarded, now building empires for women like her." Sometimes I wonder if she reads my articles. If she clicks the links, watches the interviews, hears my voice, and realizes that silence she demanded, it didn't destroy me. It made space for everything she feared most. My success. My truth. My voice. Some people throw you out of their story, forgetting the world's watching yours unfold. And in mine, they're just a footnote to my rise. It was a gala, velvet gowns, camera flashes, crystal chandeliers. The kind of room my mother once said wasn't made for girls like us. Funny, because now I wasn't just in it, I was headlining. Entrepreneur of the Year, they called it. But to me, it was just the final chapter of a book they never let me write. Until I walked away. They played a tribute video, clips of interviews, news segments, charity initiatives. Then came a surprise. A photo, an old one, of me at 12, standing outside our broken front door holding a report card with straight A's. No one had celebrated that moment. Until now. I took the stage. I looked into the sea of faces. And I said, I used to think success meant approval from my family, from my past. But I learned something stronger. Success is building a life so full, you no longer wait for someone else to clap for it. The audience rose. Applause thundered. But I was thinking about a woman miles away, sitting in a dim apartment, surrounded by silence and unpaid bills, watching me on an old TV, borrowed from a neighbor.
Mom.
The camera panned to the plaque in my hands. Elena Hart. Resilience. Reinvention. Revolution. She once said I brought nothing but trouble. And yet, here I was, funding education for girls like me, opening shelters under my foundation's name, changing lives with the same hands she said were only good for holding burdens. I didn't call her. I didn't send the footage. But I know she saw it.
How?
Because that night a florist told me, we got a delivery request from a woman who couldn't afford the full arrangement. She just wanted a single white rose sent anonymously. I didn't need a card. I knew who it was. And I didn't send anything back. Some wounds don't need stitches. They just need space to stop bleeding where no one cared. Final narration. They screamed for me to leave. And when I did, the silence echoed louder than their words ever could. They erased me from their home, But I became a name their world would never forget. And the girl they discarded? She didn't come back for revenge. She came back untouchable.